For years, I assumed choosing a music distributor was mostly about price. Find something affordable, keep as much of your royalties as possible, and don't overthink it. And that was basically my approach. But after researching nearly 20 distributors, I realized I was asking the wrong question. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes that indie artists make is assuming the most popular distributor is automatically the best distributor. I made that mistake myself, and once I started digging deeper, several of the rankings completely surprised me. A distributor that I expected to rank highly kept falling, and a distributor that most artists rarely talk about kept climbing. And one concept completely changed how I evaluate distributors. I call it future-proofing, and honestly, I wish someone had explained it to me years ago. So, in this video, I'm going to show you the top 10 music distributors for emerging indie artists in 2026. But more importantly, I'm going to show you how I got there, because the framework ended up being just as important as the rankings. And along the way, I found a few things that completely changed how I think about music distribution. So, who is this ranking for? This ranking is for a specific type of artist. Maybe you're releasing your first few singles. Maybe you're building your first catalog. Maybe you're sitting somewhere around a few thousand monthly listeners. Maybe you're trying to avoid expensive mistakes before your career grows larger. This isn't a ranking for labels, and it's not a ranking for artists doing hundreds of thousands of streams already. It's not a ranking for invite-only distribution deals. This is for the typical indie artist trying to make smart decisions early on. But before I explain the framework, I need to say just one more thing. If you think the best distributor is simply the one that everyone talks about, you're making the same mistake that I made. Popularity and value are just not the same thing. And one of the biggest things that this research showed me is that many artists choose distributors based on reputation alone, without ever evaluating whether that distributor is actually right for the stage of their career. And that's exactly what this framework is designed to solve. Let me explain now how I ranked the distributors. I scored each distributor using 5 categories. I started with financial value at 40%. Like, how much does it cost, and how much revenue do you keep, and are there hidden fees, and are there commissions? Can the economics hold up as your catalog grows? These things are most important, so they got the most weight. Then I went to simplicity at 20%. How easy is it to understand? How easy is it to use? Let's face it, when you're just getting going, you want something that's straightforward. Support and trust came next at 15%. Can you get help when you need it? Do artists generally trust the company? How does it perform when problems arise? You probably heard horror stories from indie artists about customer support, and you don't want to be a victim. Then I thought about future-proofing at 15%. This is one coming from my own experiences and learning too many things the hard way. So I didn't just evaluate what helps you today. I evaluated what you'll wish you knew 2 years from now. Like, can you grow into the platform, and will switching be painful? Are you going to regret the decision later? And lastly, I focused on growth tools at 10% because even for a newbie, things like analytics, splits, promotion tools, publishing-related features, and anything else that can help an artist grow, they still matter. So at this point, I thought I was ready to start ranking distributors, but I discovered some unexpected things during my study. The deeper I went, the more I realized the conversation around music distribution is a lot more complicated than most artists think. My discovery number 1 was that not all distributors are competing in the same category, and this was the biggest surprise. When most artists compare distributors, they throw everything into the same bucket. DistroKid, TuneCore, AWOL, 1RPM, Symphonic, CD Baby. But after digging deeper, I realized those services are not all solving the same problem. Some are open to everyone, some are selective, some are invitation-based. Some operate more like managed service music companies than self-service distributors. And if an artist can watch this video and sign up 5 minutes later, that's a very different experience than filling out an application and hoping for approval. So, one of the first things that I did was separate self-service distributors from curated and managed service platforms. And that ended up changing the ranking significantly. Discovery number 2 was that emerging artists and career artists need completely different rankings. Originally, I planned to make one ranking as a follow-up to a video I made last December, and then I realized that was a terrible idea. An artist with 5,000 monthly listeners and 3 songs released is probably solving completely different problems than an artist with a large catalog and a growing business. Emerging artists care about affordability, simplicity, avoiding mistakes, and building a foundation. Career artists care more about publishing, workflow, analytics, collaboration, and scaling revenue. And once I realized that, I split the project into 2 separate rankings and 2 separate videos. And some distributors performed very differently depending on which artist archetype I was evaluating. My discovery number 3 was that future-proofing matters more than most artists realize. This one came directly from my own experience. Looking back at my journey as an indie artist, there are things I wish I had known much earlier. Not because they mattered immediately, but because they mattered later. Questions like, will I outgrow this platform? And what happens if I stop paying? And how difficult is migration? And will this distributor still make sense if my catalog grows? Most rankings ignore those questions, but I didn't. And the results were interesting. Because choosing the wrong distributor isn't just annoying, it can become a hidden tax on your music career. Maybe it's commissions, maybe it's missed revenue opportunities, maybe it's having to migrate an entire catalog later. Whatever it is, small decisions compound over time. And then something happened that genuinely surprised me. A distributor that most indie artists rarely even mention kept outperforming some of the industry's biggest names. Not because it was more popular, not because it marketed itself better, but because once I started applying the framework consistently, it just kept scoring well. That distributor was too lost, and it completely changed my expectations going into these rankings. One benefit of building a scoring framework is that I couldn't simply rank companies based on my own assumptions. Several distributors moved dramatically during the process. For example, going into this project, I expected CD Baby to finish much closer to the top. After all, they're so well known, but as I evaluated revenue commissions, social monetization commissions, publishing-related percentages, and long-term economics, it just kept losing ground. Not exactly because it's bad, it's just because the competition has improved. And Too Lost was probably the biggest surprise of the entire study. I expected it to be a fringe contender. Very few indie artists even ever mention it. Instead, its pricing, features, analytics, royalty splits, publishing-related tools, and future-proofing characteristics kept pushing it upward. The reason it didn't finish even higher ultimately came down to trust and support questions rather than features. At one point, DistroKid ranked lower than I felt comfortable with, so I challenged the framework and I went back and asked, am I being unfair here? And once I revisited its workflow, ease of use, release volume advantages, and overall artist experience, it did climb back into one of the top tiers. And some distributors were removed entirely. This may have been just the most important adjustment. Symphonic actually performed very well in several categories, but because accessibility isn't guaranteed, I removed it from the main ranking. The same thing happened with AWOL and 1RPM. They may be great platforms, but they're not directly competing with the distributors that most emerging artists can sign up for today. The biggest surprise wasn't who won. The biggest surprise was realizing how much the industry has changed. For years, most artists felt like the entire conversation revolved around DistroKid, TuneCore, and CD Baby, and that's just no longer true. Several lesser discussed distributors are now legitimate contenders, and that's probably the most important thing I learned from this entire project. And one last thing before we get into the rankings, there are 3 distributors that deserve recognition. The best curated distributor is definitely Symphonic. It's a strong platform with a strong reputation, but accessibility concerns kept it out of the main rankings for this video. And the best selective distributor is AWOL. AWOL has built a strong reputation among indie artists, but because admission is selective, I excluded it from the main ranking. The best managed service distributor is 1RPM. 1RPM feels more like a music services company than a traditional self-service distributor. It's an interesting platform, but it's a different category. So, let's get to the top 10 distributors. I'm going to start at number 10 and work toward number 1. All of these distributors can absolutely work for the right artist, but these next few come with a few trade-offs that kept them out of the higher rankings. At number 10, I give you SoundDrop. Never heard of this one? Well, they're excellent for cover song artists. They're also simple and transparent, but the revenue share model limits its long-term appeal. For this reason, I couldn't give it a higher ranking. At number 9, I give you Horus. This is one of the most interesting distributors that I researched, and they offer great value on paper. But unfortunately, public concerns related to payments and royalties prevented it from ranking higher. And if they can work out these kinks, I'm definitely going to raise them up in my rankings. At number 8, I present SoundCloud for artists. If you're already heavily invested in SoundCloud, this can make a lot of sense. but as a pure distribution recommendation, stronger options exist. At number 7, I give you RouteNote. This is the best truly free entry option in the ranking. And if budget is your primary concern, RouteNote deserves consideration. But as revenue grows, the economics just become harder to justify. And that's why they aren't higher in my rankings. At number 6 is CD Baby. Many of my viewers know that I had a very bad personal experience with CD Baby, but I'm trying to be totally objective here. Full disclosure, I'm still a customer at CD Baby, but only for a very tiny portion of one of my clients' work. Now, they're simple, they're easy to understand, and honestly, they have 2 weaknesses. The first is financial value. So compared to modern competitors, the commission structure makes it harder to recommend than it once was. And the second is customer support. They simply left me hanging one time when I had a serious need for help, and I've seen many similar stories in blogs, social posts, and Reddit threads. All right. Now let's get into the top 5 contenders. At this point, we're looking at distributors I would have no problem recommending to most emerging artists. At number 5, I recommend Amuse. Amuse has evolved far beyond its old reputation as the free distributor. Today it offers unlimited releases, royalty advances, daily insights, and they scored highly in my future-proofing category. Much like CD Baby, support concerns ultimately kept it from finishing a little bit higher. To be clear, this came from my review of public artist feedback, support experiences, and recurring complaints I found while I was researching the platform. At number 4, I recommend Ditto. I am also a customer of Ditto, and I've had good experiences so far. And they're one of the more underrated distributors in this entire study. With Ditto, you get strong pricing, strong feature set, publishing options, content ID, and sync opportunities. I don't think enough artists seriously consider Ditto. Now, these next 3, my top 3, were the distributors that consistently separated themselves from the pack. At number 3, I recommend Too Lost, and they were the biggest surprise in the ranking. The value proposition is incredibly strong. They offer aggressive pricing at an excellent feature set. Under my future-proofing criteria, they performed really well. And the reason it didn't rank higher is not because of features, it's just because of trust and support. They still need to prove themselves over time. I came to this conclusion based on feedback from social media, articles that I've read, and some research help from AI tools. But Too Lost is one to keep your eyes on, and it's a great option for emerging indie artists in 2026. At number 2, I recommend DistroKid, which is another distributor that I'm currently using. And let's face it, they're the most recognizable name in modern music distribution. It's here for a reason. DistroKid remains one of the easiest distributors to recommend. They give artists a simple workflow, quick releases, and unlimited uploads. And ultimately, they provide an excellent overall artist experience. The only reason that it missed the top spot is that another platform delivered a more balanced packaged overall. And now, drum roll please, coming in at number 1 was TuneCore. At the end of all this research, TuneCore just simply came out on top. Not because it won every category. It didn't. And it's not because it's perfect. It isn't. TuneCore won because it never displayed a major weakness. It performed well financially, for example. It scaled well. It scored well in future-proofing. It remained broadly accessible. And when I went looking for reasons to move it down, I couldn't find enough evidence to justify doing so. If an emerging artist asked me, what's the safest, most balanced distribution choice in 2026? TuneCore would have to be my answer. And yet, I'm not a customer at TuneCore. I'm pretty satisfied with DistroKid and Ditto for now. Here's a few final thoughts. The biggest lesson from this project isn't that TuneCore finished number 1. The biggest lesson is that many artists are still choosing distributors using a framework that no longer matches today's industry. So, here's my rule for 2026. If your music career changes, your distributor should be reevaluated. And the best distributor for you today is not necessarily going to be the best distributor for you 2 years from now. So if you're not reevaluating that decision, you may be paying a hidden tax without even realizing it. Now, if you're already releasing consistently, building a catalog, and treating music more like a business than a hobby, go watch my career indie ranking. The rankings change, the priorities change, and some distributors move dramatically once the framework changes. Because eventually, you're not just releasing songs, you're building a music business. If you found value in this research, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.